Welcome to Ship Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we are here for another poetry discussion, which will appear in two separate playlists here on the channel. Number one being the poetry discussion playlist, ever nearing the 300 poem mark, so check that out. And number two being the Charles Bukowski playlist, a playlist comprised completely of Bukowski poems. The poem in question for today is known as Friends Within the Darkness. It's a great title, I have to say. And it reads as such. I can remember starving in a small room in a strange city, shades pulled down, listening to classical music. I was young. I was so young it hurt like a knife inside, because there was no alternative except to hide as long as possible. Not in self-pity, but with dismay at my limited chance, trying to connect. The old composers, Mozart, Bach, Beethoven, Brahms, were the only ones who spoke to me, and they were dead. Finally, starved and beaten, I had to go into the streets to be interviewed for low-paying and monotonous jobs by strange men behind desks, men without eyes, men without faces, who would take away my hours, break them, piss on them. Now, I work for the editors, the readers, the critics, but still hang around and drink with Mozart, Bach, Brahms, and the bee. And sometimes, and some buddies, some men. Sometimes all we need to be able to, sometimes all we need to be able to continue alone are the dead, rattling walls that close us in. Now, I butchered the end there, but I think you have to give me the benefit of the doubt because that is some strange wording on some things there. But have you been there? That moment where you look, it's a weird and wild stuff, weird and wild world in which we live. Probably at no other time in human existence has there been the ability to transcend that we have today, the tools that we have today, that anyone has today, that everyone can have today, almost everyone, but getting nearer everyone all the time. The tools that we have to climb up the walls of life are growing and becoming ubiquitous. The internet is a great equalizer. But here's the thing. When those things become ubiquitous, they are taken for granted by those in positions to expect. So, you were expected to know how to use the internet still. There are people without internet access readily available at home. You were expected to have transportation, your own, especially in the world of Uber still. The price of transportation is ever growing. The average car in the United States right now is $50,000. $50,000, the average new car sold. Great googly. But, I mean, you could always Uber, right? But you can't always count on Uber. So unless you have your own transportation, you're not getting that promotion to management where someone has to count on you to be there. But have you been there? Have you been in this place where Chinaski finds himself in this poem in a strange city with nothing? Broken. Ashamed. Probably you have. Even if that strange city is the city in which you've always lived, the place where we live can become estranged very quickly. I remember I worked my tail off for years to be able to distance myself enough from the work world, the 9 to 5. Of course, at that time, it was 2 to 10. I was working 2 to 10 shifts, probably worse even than overnight shifts, to be quite frank. And had finally claimed my ability to go off to college, living 50 miles north in the city called St. Joe, attending, I guess, a university, Missouri Western State University, I believe is in danger of losing its university title, from what I understand. I might be wrong. Um, or maybe it's the state part that they might lose. I don't know. Anyway, I was still working nearly 40 hours a week, taking all the classes I was taking and whatnot. So it wasn't really much of a reprieve, to be honest. But I was having to pay for my class. No scholarships, nobody, you know, no sugar mamas to help the Adrian. So if you're a sugar mama out there and you want to help an Adrian out, let me know. But that time has passed. Really, I was up there paying for classes as I was taking them, and it was my mother's birthday, and I checked my bank account and I had some money to get her something. So I went to Target, very fancy, and got her a couple of lamps. My plan was the next day after class, I had that day off. I would come down to Kansas City, 50-mile drive. Got to have a full tank to get there and give these things to my mother. Now, my mother's birthday is towards the front of the month. So when I had that money, I didn't think much of it. I go to school the next day, after which I'm going to have to make that drive, that long, arduous drive. It's not that long, it's about an hour, whatever. South to Kansas City. And I decided to get myself a coffee. Often got myself a coffee. And, to my chagrin, when the lovely barista in the library at Missouri Western ran my card, it was declined. Oh? Turned out, what had happened, I paid my rent, first, second, third, whenever it was due. My apartment complex had not deposited the check. So, whence I bought those lamps for my mother's birthday, and then the check for rent was deposited, Adrian didn't have any money. Adrian was in the red. I did not get to see my mother for her birthday. I did not get to deliver those lamps for her birthday. And all the food I had was all the food I had for 2 weeks. Eating stale almonds for 2 weeks, not a great experience. But I had this experience where what Bukowski is telling us here. This waking up in a foreign city with nothing to your name and hungry. It's demeaning. It's demoralizing. And always been a loner, right? And even if I wasn't a loner, I suppose I'm more proud than intelligent. I couldn't ask anybody for help. And these are sobering moments. You've been there, I'm sure. Your card's been declined somewhere. You've been stranded someplace. Woke up and realized, I don't have any friends. Something along these lines. You've been there, I'm sure. For me, so Bukowski, the poet that he is, says that it is Mozart and Bach and Brahms and Beethoven. Those are the ones that get him through. Those were the ones that helped him maintain the humanity within him. What is it for you? Probably 9 minutes into a random video on a random poem by Bukowski, it's literature. For me, it was Emily Dickinson. For me, it was Ernest Hemingway. What is it for you? What is your grounding? What is it that keeps you human? You know, in this poem here, Sometimes all we need to be able to continue alone are the dead, rattling walls that close us in. I'm going to be real honest. I don't know what that means. I think that what it is that Bukowski here is so antisocial, is so withdrawn, that in the times where he is defeated like this, being able to hide away, as he says up here, where is it here? Hide. He's hiding until he has to go into the streets, find a job. Those walls are what give him, that is to where he has to return to rejuvenate, alone between those rattling walls. Now, rattling walls sounds maybe like this has some double meaning. The rattling walls being where you live, but also rattling. Rattling often is associated rattling bones, right? Sort of an old-timey phrase, my rattling bones, my aching bones. So I wonder if Bukowski is saying here, the body lives inside the room, the spirit lives inside the body, the mind lives inside the body. He has to retreat not just within the room, but within the body, within the self, to rejuvenate. I think that's all I have for this one. This is a very, this is one, I've never read this one before, I don't think. And not by memory, anyway. And I think it's a powerful one. I think it's a good one. That is all I have for this poetry discussion. If you enjoyed this sort of thing, if you appreciate what I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out here on the channel, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button in order to stick around for more. Literature is the only thing I talk about. There's poetry every Monday, and I hope to have you back for the next one.